Colleagues, welcome back to the office. It's Steve, and welcome to the CPE Today podcast. We're going to get started with our podcast presentation here just in a moment. But before we do, I'd like to share some insight on how you can receive credit for watching today's presentation. There are two options. You can either watch live as it's being recorded through Zoom, more on that here in a moment, or you could be watching or listening on demand wherever you happen to receive content. We distribute our show through YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, our website, and many other places. Now, if you happen to be watching on demand on your own schedule, after watching or listening to today's class, head on over to cpetoday.com and locate today's course page. You can find our course code by looking at the footer of the presentation to see the link presented there, and it will also be mentioned throughout the presentation on multiple occasions. After purchasing today's class, you'll complete a short 5-question quiz on what was discussed in today's presentation. And upon passing that, your certificate for your CPE credits will be automatically generated and available for download. In addition to your purchase, you can also download copies of today's presentation, learning materials, you can ask the presenter questions, and more. Now, if you happen to be watching live as it's being recorded through Zoom, your attendance will be confirmed through attendance prompts, which will occur every 12 to 20 minutes and approximately 4 per hour. They'll pop up automatically, and when a prompt comes up, please choose a response to confirm your attendance. It doesn't actually matter what you choose as long as you choose something, as your response will confirm your engagement with our presentation. Attendance prompts might not be announced, so please keep an eye out for them. Now, as long as you've completed at least 75% of the attendance prompts, you will receive full credit for our presentation. Your completion certificate will be delivered to you by email within 2 business days of the event. You can always visit cpetoday.com if you have any questions or issues with your certificate. After our presentation today, we'd love to know what you think. There will be a course evaluation that will automatically pop up. It should take you anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes to complete, and your feedback will be used to help us produce better content in the future. Now, if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, we'd love to know what they are. Please use the chat or the Q&A functionality to let us know what you think, or if you have any questions on the materials that are being presented. Also, please feel free to share your experience, knowledge, and insight with the class. If you have any technical issues, you can also use that functionality to ask for help. You can always find great content at cpetoday.com. We have a variety of self-study and live courses from all topics: accounting, audit, personal development, Excel, QuickBooks, and more, you name it. Check out cpetoday.com. And the CPE Today podcast is made available Tuesdays and Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific. And you can always find great content being discussed in that podcast every single week. If you happen to be a new user, listener, viewer of the CPE Today podcast, thank you so much for coming. Welcome. We're ecstatic and happy to have you. How about you get a free credit on us? Use coupon code ONEFREEPODCAST at checkout to get a free credit for today's class. We're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation here in the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy our presentation.
So today's code, as you can see, is cpe.x/CPY. Again, as Steve pointed out, it is down here at the bottom. I welcome you. I'm Randy Johnston. I'm so pleased to have with me today a special guest, Bob Lewis. We're going to talk about workflows today. We'll try to understand what workflows are, and we'll illustrate why it's important to create workflows and why it's important to automate workflows. Over the last 3 decades, workflow automation has been near and dear to my heart in lots of different ways. We're also going to look at a particular solution, Corpay One, and how it can automate your workflows along the way as well. So I am Randy Johnston out of Hutchinson, Kansas. I have been teaching CPE for a good number of years, 40 plus years, on the top 25 thought leader list and on the Accounting Today top 100 list as well, inducted in the Accounting Hall of Fame back in February of 2011. And you can see my personal website at randyjohnston.com. I am involved with Network Management Group and with K2. And I am so pleased to have along today Bob Lewis. Now, I have known Bob for a long time. You can see in his experience there. I've known him from days at Microsoft and Intuit and Bill.com, and his involvement with what is now SAP Concur and AvidXchange, and most recently Giraffe. I know, Bob, you have helped the accounting profession in so many ways throughout your years, and this latest venture with Corpay is quite the thing. And I know you're very interested in high growth channels and strategic alliance. You've got good background as an accountant and sales professional and marketer and so forth. But what would you like our attendees to know about you today?
Randy, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And thank you everyone for investing your time on this topic. Very exciting and important topic to improve business here as an accounting professional. I'd say today, my background and relevance here is all about, building accounting related channels and strategic alliances. So, it's been in the small business and mid-market accounting and software space for the last 30 years, coming up here in just a few months. So, and much of that's been building accountant programs. So, back in my days of Intuit, it was bringing QuickBooks Online to the QuickBooks Pro Advisor program. At Microsoft, it was creating the Microsoft Professional Accountants Network, getting the Office suite available to accounting firms and accounting professionals through a solution you used to or may still talk about, Action Pack. Other capabilities there, if any of you recall the Microsoft Office accounting product. And since then, really over the last 10 years have been about been in the AP, expense management, and what I would call spend management category now. So got deep experience in helping firms and professionals use technology to build their business.
Yeah. And Bob, we know that the client accounting services growth, the advisory growth in firms is such a big deal. That's why I was pleased to have you come over to Corpay One and, support that particular effort throughout the firms. So at this point, let's just jump right in and talk about what a workflow is. Now, workflows are also known as business processes. And it basically allows us to show the steps used to complete a task. And it clearly helps us define who's involved in the approval process as well. Now, as you think about those claims, Bob, what do you see as the workflow automation tools that are inside Corpay One? And have we got the fundamentals of workflow right here?
Yeah, I believe so. I think there's workflow in terms of who is doing the work, and there's workflow around the transaction and automation of transactions to create efficiency. And we incorporate both, but specifically around spend management transactions. So anything related to managing bills, capturing that information, getting the approval process designed and working and through the process so that transactions follow that designed approval workflow, or the multiple workflows based on what kind of a transaction it is, or the amount, or the department, or the project, or all that might go into that. So it's a way to really automate all of those things that can be very problematic and time consuming in an old-fashioned paper movement kind of a world, or even an email kind of back and forth world today. that we are living in with, with work from home as a more common work style today, with everybody being remote. How do you manage all the process and all the different people who need to touch things to get business recorded or completed properly? So yeah, it's many of those things. With Corpay, it's about the transactions primarily.
Yeah. And as you just call out, so many people are email dependent in their processes, which is unfortunately a fairly broken way to get a lot of this stuff done. So if we can get the workflow inside systems, and we know from the entry-level products like QuickBooks or Xero all the way up through the big boys like SAP, workflow has become a part of most of the accounting products that are out there. However, even on AP automation, there just wasn't quite enough approval processes inside the products. I mean, you certainly learned that in your time over at Bill.com, as well as Avid Exchange. And, those workflows are such a big deal. And, when it comes to workflows themselves, I like to actually map workflow processes. Right now, I think I've got 3 engagements in process where we've got workflow process mapping occurring. So we can use that as selection criteria for mid-market accounting solutions. But what happens here is we tend to think that everybody in the business understands how the business works. And the fact of the matter is that maybe the founders do, maybe the people that are on the front line do. But if you don't have a way to capture that tribal knowledge in a workflow, it's pretty easy to lose it when you lose people or people change roles and so forth. So, I also am concerned that in this period of great resignation and great retirements, that or if people are just out not well for whatever reason, whether it's, COVID or flu, or my favorite new bad word, flu-rona, they've got both at the same time. We don't want to be dependent on a single person. So what have you found has been your case with workflows?
Sure. I think that's exactly right. I mean, workflow is a great way to document the process that is meant to be followed. And it's easy to assign people to a group of workflows. And so, yes, the examples you mentioned today where, with the great resignation, there's turnover, but there's also onboarding of new people. So some firms aren't having a turnover problem. They're having a, hey, we're growing, we're hiring, we're expanding, and getting new people on board when everybody's remote. How do you train? So if you can have all those workflows defined, it's much easier to follow and learn and get up to speed quickly, be efficient right out of the gate. So I think you touched on that. Documenting of process is often a gap, and accountants, we love details of transactions, but we don't naturally define and write down all our business processes, and we just know it. So, and then we tell someone and we expect them to just know it. But yeah, recording it very, very quickly, actually, in the workflow engine, it helps you have that trail and share it where you need to.
Yeah, a common friend of ours, Dr. Bob Spencer, has taught me in the past, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. If the workflow's in our head, that tribal knowledge is going to go away. So workflows are a good way to document that. And it does help with the communications between departments, or frankly, from your company to an external client or an external customer and back. So it really, in my mind, workflows help keep everybody on the same page. It also does an awful lot for trapping errors. I know in my own operations, I've got 182 workflows currently that we use. And we are down, by the way, because we had as many as 240 at one time and then optimized them to 212 and now down to 182. But we have those workflows to trap errors. And anytime we have a service failure, we actually debrief and try to figure out, how did this get through our workflow processes? And we fix that hole. And We don't have very many meetings nowadays about things that got dropped because the workflows are catching those errors. So what have you seen with this communication and error trapping methodologies? Any insights there, Bob?
Sure. Well, I think with workflow, you create a standardized process, and you can also look for exceptions. So so we have some examples where we have workflow that will be set it and forget it as long as, let's say, the invoice comes in within 5% of last month's invoice. So, hey, we get the same invoice from our landlord every month. As long as it doesn't change and it's at the expected frequency, capture it, code it, schedule it for payment, according to plan. But hey, if something changed, it's increased by 20%, it can be popped out and flagged. So that's one example of a workflow rule that could help you find a change, so an exception that needs attention. So that's one example. There's a bunch of ways you can leverage workflow to look for those changes. And then the other part of it is it creates a standard review if you set it up that way, so that, hey, we have this person who's supposed to review everything associated with this project. For example, you have a project leader who's very focused on the expenses associated with a project. Well, if that's your particular accounting challenge, you can make sure that person sees those expenses and can review them to avoid those kinds of surprises that can come up when it's all done on the back end by the accounting team.
Yeah. And so that control procedure, that internal control, is actually quite valuable to prevent overruns and so forth. And, I know historically, Bob, that, we've mapped business processes as they are, as is, and then we've morphed them to what we believe to be an improvement, a to be. And if we take, a business like Amazon, who's gone through 20, the last I knew, iterations of their warehouses, trying to optimize the way a warehouse works. And then I look at the optimization I've done with my own workflow processes. Workflow processes are certainly not static. They change over time because you've got regulatory changes, and the software you're using changes, and the business environment changes, and so forth. It's like hitting a traditional bullseye target, and the target seems to be moving around. And if you keep shooting in the same spot, you're not going to hit the center of the target anymore. So this idea of modeling business process changes, to me, is a pretty big deal on this. So, what I've tried to do, in this initial section is just talk about a workflow. So I think we're ready for our second polling question here. What's a workflow? Is it a business process? Does it show steps to complete a task? Does it allow you to define approval, or is it all of the above? So for those of you who are attending, if you want to make sure that you get the questions answered, remember you have to complete 3 of the 4 questions to qualify for your CPE credit. So Bob, on these, do you think that these items define workflows? Are there some more things that you'd say about workflows here?
Well, I think these are a great high level. It is a business process, defining it, steps to complete the process. It can be used for approvals. It can be used for a lot of things. And so I think it's hard to just put it in one bucket and say it could do just this for you. We find clients invent new ideas to keep track of workflow, and some are quite innovative. So, but yes, this is a good start for sure.
All right. Well, I think you're probably right. I believe that all 3 of those are correct. So I believe that the best answer here is all of the above on those. So let's maybe talk a little bit more than that, why workflows should be automated. And over the next few minutes, we'll just maybe go back and forth on this. One of the reasons I like workflows so much, Bob, is it reduces the amount of time needed to finish a task. Now, one thing that I know in my own business operations is I try to keep my team members' time, managed. 45 hours a week, 42 hours a week, something like that is ample time for people to be working. Yet I know I have competitors that are spending 60 hours a week and have maybe double the number of people. Now, if you start running the numbers on that, you realize a competitor has twice the number of people and their people are working 15 hours a week more than our people. You can see there must be some optimization that's occurred in there. But what have you seen in terms of workflows reducing the time to finish a task?
We see, we think it's the core of it. And we hear our clients talk about saving something like 50, 60, 70% of the amount of time it takes to perform what used to be done manually. So as they expand the volume of transactions that they can automate, they could really save a lot of time. And usually that equates to being able to serve more clients or have a more balanced, work-life balance. And,
and with the shortage, if we will, with labor, being able to serve more clients in the same amount of time is pretty nifty deal, as I would see it at this point. The other thing that seems to be true is we actually can define the process and make sure that it's repeatable so that it's followed correctly and so forth. And a lot of times the workflow tools out there will have documentation as to the next step and so forth. So, what have you seen in this area?
So I think, we have sometimes workflow documented, on paper or, in a Word document or Google Sheet, whatever. And then other times it's right in our product, and that's enough for some clients. What I see done is sometimes we have workflow that's specific to a client and it's customized. Other times we have workflow that is used across all clients or an industry specific group of clients. And so you can create those at a dashboard level. And this kind of goes back to your testing out new business processes, where you can create a new workflow at a high level, at a macro kind of across all clients, test it with a couple, observe the improvement, and then you can decide, do I roll it across just those in a specific industry, all my clients, or select clients who have this unique challenge that it's designed to support and make better.
Yeah, and I know the settings inside Corpay One really allow this self-documenting. It's really inside there, so you can see the steps and so forth. Now, on another session, this is just one of two sessions we're going to do on Corpay One. We're going to demonstrate some of those features inside the product. But another thing that I know that workflow has traditionally done is it allows for more accurate planning and scheduling. We can discern over time how long it takes to do various tasks. Of course, the idea is it takes less time and is optimized, and we make less errors. But also, when the volumes start to go up, it also allows us to schedule the appropriate number of people and know that we're really asking a reasonable workload of the team members involved and so forth. So, I know that for ourselves, we will actually project how many people we need for various projects, and try to onboard them in a reasonable amount of time. Because you're absolutely right, Bob. This onboarding process and trying to teach people our standard processes, they realize pretty quickly these processes that we've thought through work if they'll just follow the process. And it turns out to be quite freeing rather than limiting. So many times people think that processes put you in a box, and what they do is they actually open things up because you don't have to worry about the day-to-day things because you're kept kind of in the lanes, if you will. So what have you seen around, planning, scheduling, and then, the controls around how quickly a workflow can be created or completed?
Yeah, so we see, we do see that workforce planning, like how many clients can my team support? And by using this tool and this workflow, how many, what are the efficiencies gained? And then what does that mean for the business? What does it mean for vacation scheduling? And, can people now get away during a busy season period, when really necessary, still, or are we really structuring people for summer and other downtimes? I think the other thing is with keeping track of workflow at a centralized level and making that available to others. It's easy for a firm who knows their process to roll it out. Now, we've also found is that some firms don't know, or some clients don't know what process they'd like to use. And so having examples and some templates of workflow to create efficiencies is often very helpful. Mm-hmm. So, hey, no, we used to just do what the client asks, and okay, that's great. How about if we create some process, create more efficiency? You can still customize to support those that have it, but create standardization for the areas that can be done the same and faster. And so that helps also with control. And so that's another, having consistent process where possible enhances controls too.
Yeah. And, when work is spiky, whether that means we're doing 1099s or W-2s, or we're doing 941s if it's payroll processes as an example, or whether it's the weekly bills or some periodical payroll, you can have a pretty good idea what it's going to take to complete that end-to-end process, a month-end close. And, we can just keep naming processes here. A pretty good rule of thumb that I've applied is that workflow processes in most industry businesses will number between 175 and 250. And in most CPA firms, there'll be 75 to 100 processes. And that number's actually up a little bit than it used to be because we've gone beyond tax and audit compliance into client accounting services and advisory and other areas. So it is fascinating to me how close I can call the shot on when tasks are going to be completed, because we can actually forecast based on what we believe the workflow to be about when things are going to get done. And it's been very, very good, like you mentioned, from a vacation planning, for example. Oh, we've got this work. Do we have enough people to get it? Sure, you can go. It's not that big a deal, that type of thing. So any case, so on that line, then we really try to create business rules to decide, when one step's done and when the next one's going to complete, or sometimes we actually fork them and have multiple things going on. Now, I know inside Corpay, you've got the ability to control some of these business rules and automate some of the payment and expense coding and get it to flow through. Can you describe how that works either within Corpay One or just conceptually? What you'd have our listeners think about today?
Yeah. So the very first step usually is the workflow is usually triggered by a document has been received. There are other triggers, many other triggers that could be initiate a workflow, but that's one. And that document could be a bill, it could be a paid bill from a subscription. It could be which may also be considered a receipt. Or a receipt itself, credit memo, other things that may initiate a transaction. And so the very first part of that is capturing the document itself, the image and the data. And then from that information, we can then trigger workflow to to kick off a process. So it might be a standard bill through a normal process, and you've got a regular workflow for that approval process, which in previous lives and other solutions, there's usually only that one workflow option. You've got your single approval process that everything flows through. Well, that it is good. That's a good step, but usually not every transaction needs to follow that same process. We have different transaction amounts. We have different departments. We have different projects. We have a variety of things that may drive a different step. We might need to split expenses to different places. And so based on all those things, we might trigger a different process. So the normal rule might be, hey, everything over $100 or less than $5,000 goes from the accountant bookkeeping team to the director of services at the nonprofit. But anything over $5,000 may need to go to a board member for approval. So you could create an approval for certain transaction types that would then trigger that extra step. Hey, if 2 of these 6 board members approve this transaction, then it continues on to payment. So those are the types of things that you may consider. Or let's say you've got a vendor that's coming, a bill, it's a new vendor, and you need to initiate the process to capture a W-9. So you can have an easy creation of the 1099 that you might need to create at the end of the year for that particular type of vendor. So, those are the things that you don't normally see in a traditional accounting workflow approval process, which we call it a workflow, but it's usually, this is the one approval process. Well, workflow makes it much more flexible. You can always have that one if that's really the simplicity that process and that client needs. But more often, the flexibility to do other things is really key. So
yeah, and I'm listening as you were saying that too, because I've coded those workflows in my programming life, and they were very restrictive. Yes, we tried to make them as general as we could. We were curious about those and wanted to make them flexible, but it's not near as good as the flexible workflows. And I was actually just thinking about another product that we've talked about in other CPE Today podcasts, and realized that, yes, the problem with the product is it actually only has a single workflow coded. It's a good workflow, but it's a single workflow, and that's actually part of the issue there too. So yeah. I think from that, then, another one that's clearly a benefit today as we see it is this manual data entry process is being minimized. Part of that's coming from bank feeds, part of that's coming from document capture and extraction and so forth. And I know in your world, you've integrated with a number of platforms, including Sage Intacct and QuickBooks and Xero, and the third-party tool of Zapier for even more integrations and Slack. But just talk to us about this balance of manual data and the integrations.
Yeah. So, integration's key. Getting data and documents into the other systems is really important. So sometimes we want to see not just the data from the bill, but the actual bill in the accounting system too. So part of it is keeping the data in real time and live across the systems that you're performing an accounting function or process in. The other part of this, also touches on the automation piece just above. So, the manual data capture. So, for example, more and more companies are trying to auto pay certain things. Companies are driving it, they're asking for it, and giving discounts or other things for auto pay. Well, there's still a transaction that needs to be captured, even though the payment's automated. And so you get a bill, but some of so you got a bill, it's paid, or it's an invoice that's a bill, invoice, and paid, or a receipt. So how about setting up a process that, you feed that in, it gets captured, it automates completely all the way through into the accounting system. And if it's a recurring expense, no one even needs to touch it. It's the same every time. So those are the kinds of things that you can automate now that traditionally have taken manual keying for a transaction that happens every month.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, Kevin asked the question, and I think I know the answer, but I'd rather have you answer this one, Bob. Does Corpay One integrate with Sage 100, the former MES 90 or MES 100?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. We don't have an embedded integration. We do have the ability to export and import. So be happy to help you understand that, how it might work. But there's not yet a direct, bi-directional sync with Sage 100.
Yeah, I thought that would be the case. So,
Yep.
So Kevin, I have passed an answer to you along on the side as well. So you can kind of see how this is all flowing here. But, these products that have accounts payable automation and payment automation are a big deal. And Bob, I think conservatively, I've looked at 20 plus products in this category. And, I was actually pleased that Corpay One was selected by the K2 team as, kind of the product of the year of this class. So I think that gets us to the point we're ready for another polling question on workflow automation. So the question is, with workflow automation, does it reduce the time to complete a task? Does it enforce business rules? Does it reduce manual entry, or all of the above? So as you're thinking about your answer there, notice that the workflow processes can sometimes be built into accounting platforms. Sometimes they're built into third-party tools like Corpay One. Sometimes they are complete independent workflow tools. In fact, at a point in time when I've taught workflow, I concluded that there were 7 different types of workflow automations that could be done. And, that's a little broader than today's podcast go, but I still am sticking with my guns on the 7 different types of workflow automations. Now, Bob, are there other workflow automations or items that you'd identify that you've seen to be very beneficial? Because let's face it, you've got decades of experience here. So what have you seen in workflow automation that's special or should be called out as well?
I think so. So I think all this is right. I think the keys, here, standardize process, control the process, save time. And along with that comes improvements in accuracy as well. But what I think it sometimes we don't talk about is it helps with learning, onboarding, offboarding, and getting processes to be done more quickly. So another area that we hear, for example, is time to close. So, hey, we want to get our books closed faster. And, we're trying to get everything out by the 5th day of the month. And our clients want their reports quickly, but we have to charge a premium because of all that extra time. Well, it helps you can kind of get things done reduces time to complete a task, but that also helps you meet expectations more consistently.
Makes great sense. Well, so out of these, I think reducing the time to complete a task is true. I think enforcing the business rules is true. I appreciated your example of the $5,000 and board approvals there. Reduces manual entry. That clearly seems to be the case. So again, all of the above seems to be the best answer here. Well, in the next bit of time that we have, again, you keep me honest, but as I've observed on Corpay One's capability, there's some nifty stuff that is inside the offering. Essentially free money transfers is clearly one of those things. Being able to do bill payments in general at a lower cost than common AP solutions. So I'll call out a big name that you've got experience with, Bill.com. I think it is less expensive to do, accounts payable transactions on Corpay than it is with many of these competitors. And I think the integration capabilities that your team has built with websites and accounting applications is a big deal. And for those of you who are in public practice, I think it can reduce the cost for your firm and for your clients, which is notable. And if you're an industry attendee today, it can reduce the cost for your own business as well. So, those capabilities just shout at me, Bob. They're so good in terms of the capabilities, but I suspect there might be some more. Have I really understood the most important things out of Corpay One, or there's probably some more that we're going to cover here in just a minute?
I think we'll go through those. Some slides that'll talk more a little about the high level capabilities of what are all the different core functionality areas of the product, and what does it do. So in addition to the focus around workflow. So here we go. So Corpay One for advisors, often accounting firms and bookkeepers, is a combination of corporate card, expense reimbursement, accounts payable, invoice, and bill pay solutions to really enable the entire spend management function, and to manage that on behalf of clients, involving them as necessary based on their interest and your business process with clients. So it really starts with the document and data capture, the approval of that document, whether that's a bill or a receipt or an expense report, the integration of the corporate card or the fuel card that is driving some of that expense, and then the last mile, making the payments. And so we help make those payments, whether that's a check being sent or an ACH payment if it's paid by card. We also can fund payments from a card. So there are select periods where it makes sense to say, hey, we're a little tight on cash flow. We've got a great credit limit from our card. We can leverage that, still pay it off, manage our funding right, and our expenses properly, but get that payment made and keep business flowing. So a lot more flexibility in here. These are the high points of the product, and you can see on the left there a little bit of how the bill pay screen area works. And there's a great deal of functionality in this small business spend management platform.
Yeah, and we'll be demonstrating that platform for you on another session, so you'll get to see it in detail and how it works. But what you built into the platform to this point, I was quite pleased with, and I know we've talked about some of the changes that you'll be making over time too. So that's a pretty big deal. So I know that the parent company here is FleetCor, and maybe if you could explain how Corpay One fits into all of the corporate structure would be helpful.
Sure, thanks. Corpay started as Roger, and we acquired the company a little over or about a year ago now, and it's part of FleetCor. Now, FleetCor, we're a global leader in B2B payments. We're one of the S&P 500 stocks. We have billions in revenue and 8,500 plus employees and hundreds of thousands of customers who use our payment and card products. So we are the infrastructure. We are the payment infrastructure. We're a card issuer. We're the largest virtual card issuer. We're the largest provider of foreign currency payments outside of banks. So we have 20 years of experience as the money mover, and what Corpay brings is the front end software solution. So we can offer as a provider a great service at a fantastic value because of that history of who we are as FleetCor.
Yes, so I was actually quite pleased to see, the acquisition of Roger. I watched that really from the get-go. In fact, had Roger on my list before FleetCor acquired the company and product, and have analyzed, as I said earlier in our time together, 20 plus of these products over time. And, I knew your involvement told me that the probability of Corpay being successful in accounting was good because you understood the accounting profession so well and why accounting firms should choose Corpay One. So what are some of the key things that you'd like to make sure that our listeners and attendees know today?
Well, I appreciate that vote of confidence, Randy. It's very flattering. What attracted me to the solution and the company precisely is the commitment to the accounting channel. As a long time program, creator and partner program owner, I really understand what it takes to support the accounting community. The product is only the beginning. It's the service model that's even more important. So having the UI that it's easy to use and learn. When clients interact with it, it's simple so that they don't need a lot of hand holding. The pricing model designed to support clients of any size. So you could standardize on a tool, whether your client is small and has 2 or 10 checks a month, or they're large and they have hundreds of payments to manage a month. So you need that flexibility, and then the automation with the workflow engine, and this whole concept of the ability to create a tailored workflow that's easy for someone like me. I'm not a coder. I didn't study workflow. I didn't know what that meant before I got into using these kinds of products. And it's easy. I could do it. It's logic. And as an accountant, we're logical. So it's really, it's quite easy to use. It's priced right for many, for any client size, and just takes efficiency to another level. So that's why we're finding success with the firms who've adopted it so far, and that's scaling up very quickly, actually. So
yeah. So one of the questions just came in from an attendee, Bob, that says, are there particular features or functions of Corpay that you feel really distinguishes you from the other providers in the space, or any particular features that you've become particularly proud of?
So several things. One, so the biggest overall differentiator in the work itself is the workflow. So that's the hero of our product. Secondarily is the business model. So because we make money on the back end moving money, the pricing is better, and then the integration is another. So I'll just touch on pricing since we're here. So yeah, there's really no fee for the software. There's no monthly fee. There's no user fees. There's no standard monthly bank fee. There's no fees. There's no monthly fees or approver fees. We do have fees for certain transaction types, but most transactions are also included. So making ACH or check payments, there's no cost for those. If you want to send an international wire, we need to charge a little bit for that. If you have to do void checks, check replacement, we got to interact with the banks. There's a small fee for that, which is really an exception process. And, some clients that never happens, and some, it happens sometimes. And then if you do fund payments with a card that are, for the vendor who does not accept a card, then there's a markup for that type of a payment. But that's it. So
yeah, when I saw these numbers originally, Bob, it's like, okay, yeah, how do you do that?
yeah, exactly. How do we make money? We make money. Well, we make money moving money. And so let's explain this. There's a few specific places, yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm jumping slides on you, but I jumped you down to that dollar one. So
we'll
sorry
jump
about
back.
that.
Okay, we'll take it back up to integration. So integration is another key differentiator. And so we integrate today with QBO, QuickBooks Desktop, Xero, and Sage Intacct. And within those, there's a great deal of capability. So we strive to have a deeper integration to support deeper accounting functionality, and to also push in the documents as well as the data. So that's the key. And so that typically empowers the core platforms that firms are using for bookkeeping. There's sometimes a few others, but that usually covers all of them.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting to illustrate with the sync that you did to QuickBooks here, because the depth of integration is frankly quite broad.
Yeah, so and this is always increasing in capability, and we're in the process of rolling out even bi-directional sync, so that kind of everything vendors down is two directions, and we're in the rollout of that process today. So we added a few months back departments and locations and projects and customers, so that you can integrate to projects and customers, or customers and projects underneath it in QuickBooks as well. So and as we get clients with greater needs, and firms, with more and more clients using the solutions, we expand the capabilities to support those edge cases as they come up. But today we can support a very high percentage of capabilities and functionality. So very, very happy with how we've developed and invested here.
Yeah, it makes good sense to me too, as well. So, I think with that in mind, I hope what we've learned is that, Corpay today can integrate with a variety of platforms. In fact, we'll make this in the form of your next question. So Corpay can integrate with a variety of platforms, or provide bill payment at lower costs, or give you flexible approval workflows, or all of the above. And, as our listeners and attendees are thinking about that, Bob, there's so much that you and I have chatted about with the platform here, and, some of the future things. So I don't want to tip any cards unnecessarily today. But, I hope what our attendees have learned and listened to is that the workflow processes that you need for, payable payments and expenses can actually flow through this system at very minimal costs. Most of us don't have international transfers. Most of us don't have the clawbacks that you saw and so forth. So, I'm pretty pleased. And, I'm just thinking about your long legacy of these various accountant programs. And I know you're driving the accountant program here at Corpay as well. So are there other things that our attendees should know?
So in addition to the solution that's designed to support, working well with clients, we also have a team here that is an accountant team. a team of account managers who are here to help you learn about, research, test, and roll out the solution. We are available to help with coaching, with training, examples of workflow. We also have a dedicated accountant support team so that our people understand the business of accounting and the deeper questions that we typically have. And so I found that to be very helpful in other experiences, and it's just critical to serving the accounting community the right way. And we're committed to that here. We're kind of like half the business that we do, so we get a lot. We're invested. We're fully committed, and that's probably the key. In addition to great solutions that do the things we need at a good value, we've got the team here to help support you and make it real, take care of the problems that inevitably happen, exceptions and unique things that you need a little help with. We're here to help you get it resolved.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, I believe that Corpay can integrate with a variety of platforms, does provide bill payment at lower cost, and does have flexible approval workflows. So again, I think the correct answer is all the above today. And as I wrote those questions for this presentation, I actually usually try to not have all the above be all the answers, but your platform has been amazingly complete as we see it. So, today what we were trying to get across was what workflows are and why it was important to create the workflows. And then also why it was important to automate the workflows and why a tool like Corpay One can do that for you. And as it turns out, can do it at relatively low costs. So we will have future sessions here where, you can see how to apply Corpay in your CAS practices or for your industry attendees on the sessions that you can actually use it in your own business. So Bob, any parting thoughts here in our final moments together?
So for those who are, attending from industry, we do have another half our business that's focused on you. So we'd love to help you there as well. I think the key, kind of back to that, how are we different, is summarize. It's, affordable for clients of any size. It helps you automate the smallest as well as the more sophisticated. It's a comprehensive solution, including corporate card through bill pay and expense reports. And the pricing is fantastic with workflows to help you automate even more of the transactions than ever before.
Yeah. Well, Bob, I appreciate it. I have pulled the website up so people can take a peek at that, but it is Corpay One. And, I can't tell you how pleased I am to spend the time with you today, Bob, because I know this venture for you will be successful. And I look forward to your company serving a great variety of accountants in both industry and in public practice. So thank you for your time, and thanks to everyone who was on today's podcast.
Thank you, Randy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for attending our presentation and podcast for today. As a reminder, you can check out cpetoday.com for all your continuing education needs. We have courses on every topic you can think of, from accounting to audit to ethics and regulation and more. Everything you need to know to stay relevant, current, and up to date with the profession. Again, check out cpetoday.com. If you're a new watcher or listener to the CPE Today podcast, again, we offer you a free course and a free credit for you to try our services. Pick the podcast of your choosing and use coupon code ONEFREEPODCAST at checkout to make that purchase free. If you enjoyed our presentation, please consider connecting with us on social media and let us know what you think. You can find us just about everywhere at CPE Today, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. And please consider subscribing to us wherever you happen to receive your content. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and others. We'd love for you to leave a review and let us know what you think. It helps new listeners and watchers find our course and content. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for being in the office, and we look forward to seeing you back here soon. Take care.